Okay, I'll call this plan commission meeting for November 11th, 2019 to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Joe Zitzelberger.
Here.
Christine Runge. Brad Zeman.
Here.
Brian Malish. Chris Thomas.
Here.
Brian Wallace.
Here. Okay, first item is minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from September 9th.
Motion by Joe Zitzelberger,
Give it a second.
second by Brad Zeman. Any other comments? Roll call to question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Sorry, I stalled for our two other commission members.
Oh, Brian, that is.
These were in the back. You can have that in case.
Okay, next item we have are public comments for items not on the agenda for this evening. Is there anybody who'd like to address the commission on anything that's not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move forward. All right, new business. First item, public hearing and discussion action on a request by Jay King for a conditional use permit to operate a custom woodworking business at 1130 Bluebird Trail. So the way this will go is, Kevin, you want to introduce?
Very quickly.
Introduce, and then we'll open up for public hearing, and then we'll close the public hearing, we'll discuss, and move from there. Go ahead, Kevin.
Just as introduction, home occupations, there are standards that need to be applied in terms of granting it. And actually Brian's included many of those conditions that we need to satisfy within the draft conditional use permit. It's not that we're recommending approval of it. We didn't think it would be appropriate to recommend approval until after the public hearing, depending on the outcome of the input from the public. I would point out to you that there is a provision within our home occupations that has an exception, and I'll just read it, just so you know what it is when you go through this. A home occupation under this section may be maintained in any residential district as a permitted use as opposed to a conditional use if the standards of subsection B of the section are complied with and no sign is erected or maintained regarding the home occupation and no more than one person works on the premise and no customers regularly come to the house. So depending on what he's proposing to do at this particular, as a home occupation, he may qualify for that exception and not even require home occupation. So keep that in mind, and I think before you have the public hearing, it'd probably be good to hear from the applicant and then go through the rules for the public hearing, and then we can summarize that with some public comment, or with staff comments.
Perfect. If you want to come on over here, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Jay Kang. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to give a little spiel, and thank you guys for coming to show support. I'm just going to be very honest. So, like, in my previous life, I used to speak in front of hundreds of people on a regular basis, thousands occasionally. Never once nervous. I would actually say a lot of my friends thought I was too comfortable doing it, right? Because I like to hear the sound of my own voice. But I can hear my voice quaking because I'm very nervous, because I'm actually speaking about something that's very dear to me and that actually impacts myself and my family moving forward. So I apologize about the quake. So again, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to come before you. My name is Jay Kang. That's my wife, Laura Kang. I'm the owner and maker at Rescued Woodworks. And I'm here in front of you today to request approval for the conditional use permit to allow the operation of a home occupation at 1130 Bluebird Trail in Savannah Village. I'm fully aware of the conditions set forth and the standards set forth in section 133-936 of the Village of Waunakee zoning code. And I'm also confident that I can and am committed to operating the business under those guidelines. I do ask that the conditional use permit be approved with no further restrictions or conditions other than those that are already proposed or laid out in front of you in the proposed CUP application. So I wanted to prepare a presentation for you guys, so I have about 3 hours worth of a PowerPoint that goes in depth ad nauseum about everything I do, but Trace, she wouldn't let me do it. So I distilled it down to about 2.5 minutes. So if you're ready, we're gonna do this. I'm a veteran-owned, family-owned, home-based business. I create mindful products using sustainably and responsibly sourced materials, and I have a strong commitment towards education and charitable giving. So the business operates as an online storefront, and it sells mostly premium pet furniture, homewares, kitchenwares, home and holiday decor, as well as some medium format woodworking products. Most every product that I sell is handmade, bespoke, and made to order. I don't carry an inventory other than what I'm required to on e-commerce sites. I'm also a member of the Urban Wood Collective, which is a collective committed to responsibly and sustainably sourcing lumber through the use of and harvesting of trees that municipalities would cut down. I'm not a production wood shop. Yes, I have done some production runs in the past, but those were only in an effort to support other local businesses, which I can get into later if requested. The home occupation allows me the privilege of working from home, and that is the most important thing to me. As many of you read my bio, you understand the previous life that I lived, being gone over 200 days a year as my son was growing up. This is a very big departure from that. So right now, I currently occupy 1.5 stalls in my 3.5 garage, so there's plenty of room to grow. There's plenty of room to expand within that space. And the home occupation also allows me to minimize overhead, which is one of the reasons why the business has been able to, donate over $8,000 as a small business in charitable giving this year. So the approval of the CUP is not only pivotal to the survival of the business, but it also empowers me to continue to be a positive agent of change in the community and beyond. So I find myself in a quandary, right, in the sense that I feel deeply apologetic to the Hughes, that I've impacted their life in a negative fashion, as witnessed by the letters and the complaints that they've mailed to the village. But at what point do you start giving less credence to complaints that are clearly not the voice of reason and not the voice of an active community? Right? So in light of this, without going into the details of either my business in depth or the complaint, I'd be happy to provide any clarification that the board may have or that anybody may have, and answer any questions regarding the business and how I plan to proceed and conduct myself in the future. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, then we're gonna open the public hearing up. 6:09. That's right. And how this works is if you are wanting to speak, you'll have 3 minutes that you can speak. Otherwise, if you provided a written, I'll read those off as I go. And if you didn't hand in one of these forms to Tracy and you'd like to speak, please get that to her ASAP. Okay? All right, first person we have is, and by the way, these are in no order, this was just handed to me from Tracy, so I haven't seen them yet either. So if I murder somebody's name or say something wrong and you're here, please state that. Okay. The first person is Lisa Wilcox, 1212 O'Neill Passage. She supports, and she says, I have known Jay King now for several years. My son has babysat for his son for the last 2 years as well. Jay is a great guy with amazing character. He is respectful and a pillar in our community. Jay's business adds value to our neighborhood and community. He is a respectful individual. So I'll just grab the one that was just handed to me here. So, Scott? Duthan? Dutkin? All right, that was close. Okay, he is at 1129 Bluebird Trail, and he supports and would like to speak.
So I'm a neighbor and a friend of Jay Kang, so I walk my dog past their house 3 times a day. So I like this. One thing I'd say, being someone that walks by the house all the time, I have never really noticed any extensive noise or anything, no more than I can hear from any other house in the neighborhood. So nothing's ever stood out to me. I'd also like to say that as a friend of Jay and Laura, and kind of watching them sort of produce sort of not only the physical product that he produces, but also sort of like the family traits and the things that he does as a business owner and as a family friend. He having that business close to our house has actually been beneficial to me raising my children. Because my son is someone that is very curious and inquisitive, and he has often asked to go over and kind of see what Jay's doing and see what's going on there, and kind of wants to get in there and try to do some things and build some stuff. And went over there and we built a bridge one day down to put a little bridge over the where the covered bridge is and everything. So I feel like it's a value to our community to have that type of opportunity for, you know, kids or children in the neighborhood walking by and seeing like somebody working, someone building things, someone actually like using their hands to do something, is a huge positive. Because I grew up living in cities and things like that, and you see a lot of stuff around cities that are sort of, you know, pique your interest. When you walk around Waunakee neighborhoods, sometimes you don't see that. You just see the houses around, and so I actually like seeing people work and like seeing that stuff that they produce. And I also have purchased things for gifts for different friends and whatnot, and it's kind of like a big piece of pride when I give that gift, and I'm like, hey, this was built in our neighborhood. It's really cool. It was sourced by wood from the area. So I have a friend that lives in California that grew up in Baraboo, and I bought some of Jay's cutting boards. And when I gave them to him, I'm like, these are sourced right by where you grew up. These are really cool. Like, Jay makes them right in our house. Like, next time you guys come visit, I'll show you like where these things were made. It's like there's a lot of pride in that, and I'd hate to see that go away. So just wanted to give my opinion. So
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Andrew Wilcox, 1212 O'Neill Passage. In support, would like to speak.
Hello, my name's Andrew Wilcox. I am a neighbor of Jay King. I'm here in support. First off, Jay mentioned he is a veteran, so it is Veterans Day. Want to thank Jay for his service in the Marine Corps. I'm also a father of a daughter who had the assignment for Pineland Derby car, and she was struggling with the design. She was getting frustrated with kind of the process, and being a friend of Jay, we kind of were getting close to the deadline, decided to call Jay up and see if he would be willing to help. Like he described, he was willing to drop everything for, bring us over, help her visualize the design, help her with working with the material, with the saws and the materials in his garage. Not that he did it for her, but taught her how to do it, and it's just it's an example of the character that Jay has to be able to, take the time, drop what he had to invest in the neighborhood kids to help support that process. She ended up beating a bunch of the boys in the class, so we were very proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Katie Murphy, 1308 Tierney Drive, in support. Would like to speak.
Hi, my name's Katie Murphy. I live at 1308 Tierney Drive now, but I have been a resident at 1118 Bluebird Trail for the past 10 years, so probably 5 that you guys were there. Not only are Jay and Laura wonderful friends and neighbors, but Jay's business is just a wonderful opportunity for people to purchase from an artisan in our own community. His work is beautiful, thoughtful. He uses reclaimed wood. He is just very, very thoughtful and considerate about the products that he uses. He's also extremely considerate about his neighbors. He's the guy that will come to my house at midnight when my husband's out of town because the power goes out, and he comes with the flashlights and makes sure that the kids are okay. Laura and Jay are just really, really amazing neighbors. As a former neighbor, I want to speak to any concerns that people may have about noise or any nuisance that his business could possibly cause. I lived 5 doors down from him and never heard, saw, or noticed anything. The only reason I knew that he did woodworking is because he's a friend. So, when we would walk by, we would see him working in his garage. No other neighbors ever expressed to me or my husband that they were concerned about his business. It was just a non-issue for us. My husband's out of town, But if you'd let me read a letter that I think he shared. He says that Jay King is without question the best neighbor I have ever had. He and his family are kind, generous, and helpful in all ways and to all neighbors. Whether this involves lending a hand with household needs, loaning equipment supplies, or providing expertise related to a wide range of topics, Jay is simply an incredible resource to the neighborhood. He has done so much for my family and does so much to support the entire neighborhood that it is difficult to imagine a more positive individual on our Waunakee community. Jay's woodworking has never caused any kind of noticeable noise or commotion in the neighborhood. If I did not know Jay, I would never have suspected that he was doing woodworking in his garage. The notion that there is any noise or otherwise negative impact of Jay's woodworking is pure nonsense. I never heard a single complaint from any neighbor on Bluebird Trail or elsewhere in Waunakee related to Jay's woodworking. I cannot imagine who would have taken issue with it.
Time's up.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Adam Berg. Yes, 3377 Basil Drive, Madison. He is here in support, and his comments are, as a customer of J. Kang's Reserve Woodworks, I want to offer support to his small business. He makes unique, one-of-a-kind wood products in small quantities. This business is a benefit to the area and Wisconsin. It would be a loss in the community if his business were to be shut down. Then we have Greg Reek. 1136 Bluebird Trail, in support, would like to speak.
So I'll keep it quick. On a personal level, I live 3 houses down from Jay. My wife's at home with the kids all day, so throughout the day, she's walking past, driving past. Never once has she said a word to me about any issues. I walk past, drive past multiple times a day. And as Katie mentioned, unless I knew he was doing that in his garage, I would have no idea otherwise. So I'll start there and then echo on the personal level what everybody else said about Jay. He's reasonable. If there's ever a question, I know for sure in all my interactions with him, I could just approach him and we'd have a conversation, and I know that he would either apologize and fix it, or we'd have a conversation where we'd have a mutually agreed upon solution. But the real thing that touched me when I saw the letter in the mail come through was, so I'm on the board of ambassadors for Coaches vs. Cancer, which is a connection with American Cancer Society. And the only reason I tell you that is because a couple months ago, I was posting on social media trying to raise some funds for an upcoming event, and Jay approached me. So he said, hey, I want to help, what can I do? Do you need certain things for a silent auction? And so I said yes. And so I didn't even have to go to him. Because of his business and what he's doing, he's using his skill set to create things that are raising money to go towards directly UW Carbone, which is having a direct impact on our community. So for those reasons, I'm in full support of Jay, and I think he should be able to continue what he's doing as his neighbor, as he's adding a ton of value to our entire community.
Thank you. Next we have Eric Hatchell, 1134 Bluebird Trail, would like to speak in support.
Thank you, Chris. I'll be real quick. 1134 Bluebird Trail is 2 houses down from the Kangs. And if you've been on Bluebird, the homes are pretty tight. So if there was ever a problem with noise, I would have heard it. And in my 7 or 8 years living there, I've never once heard any noise from any sort of operation that's going on at the Kangs. I did read the complete package in anticipation of the hearing, and including the lengthy letter filed by Michael and Kim Hughes. And I think it's just imaginary. It's not consistent with my experience in any way. I think that letter gives the perception that the Kangs are operating a large-scale manufacturing facility 24/7, and that's simply not true. I also take issue with the end of their letter, where they try to put the onus on the Kangs, saying that they have to provide all of this evidence, that they aren't going to violate the restrictions in the ordinance. And I just don't think that's consistent with what has to be done to get a conditional use permit. And I would ask you to listen to all the great things that are being said about Jay and give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to listen to the board, he's going to follow the terms of the CUP, not deny it based on any sort of lack of evidence. I don't think he needs to go get an EPA test, for example, done before you can grant the permit. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So one thing I'd like to caution everybody, and I won't allow it to happen again. If somebody has a complaint and they state it, it's okay to give your opinions about it, but please don't say anything negative or derogatory about anybody in the complaint within it, because they have their opinion as well. Okay. Next, we have David Ochoa, 1123 Bluebird Trail. In support, would like to speak.
Hello, David Ochoa, 1123 Bluebird Trail. I won't say anything bad about the complaint because I didn't read the letter. The reason that I didn't read the letter is because I'm kind of in the same position, I think, as what you've been hearing here. We live one house across and one house over from them. And it's just, if I didn't know Jay and what he had going on over there, I wouldn't know anything was going on over there. But yeah, as far as his character, very nice guy, would do anything for anybody, and he does. In fact, Jay and I own a trailer together. How much did we pay for that trailer? So the insurance, I think, is gonna be coming up due again on that, so you're gonna handle that, right? But always very sharing, great family, hard workers, and like I said, I would second, third, fourth the fact that you wouldn't know anything's going on over there. I mean, we keep our windows open in the summer and things like that. And never heard a thing, never smelt a thing. So full support. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Heather Thompson, 1709 Allison Lane. In support, would like to speak.
Good evening. So I want to come here tonight to speak to the character of Jay, or in our house we know him as Mr. J. I find it ironic that we are here on Veterans Day, and Mr. J himself is a veteran. Why I bring this connection up is that I think it really directly relates to Jay's character. He is selfless time and time again. He served our country and then later in life made a decision to leave his corporate job and serve his family, and in turn serving his community, finding a passion in working with reclaimed local woods, and now that's being called into question. To know Mr. J is to know his commitment and passion in everything he's involved with, from the latest and greatest technology to a great idea to his family and friends. Jay is committed to the people and ventures in his life. He does the research behind what he invests his time and energy into, and he takes all things into consideration when making a decision that may affect those within his family, his friends, community, and beyond. But more than anything else, to know Jay is to know his commitment and compassion to and for others. He and his wife Laura are the first to pitch in whenever needed, and the last ones to say to help up. My husband and I have been close friends with Mr. J and Laura since college for well over 15 years. They've been there for us numerous times, whether in times of celebration, at the birth of both our daughters, or in times of emergency and crisis. Without question, at a moment's notice, they're always the first ones there. On my daughter's first days of school, when I can't be there, the Kangs check in and send me pictures so that I can see them. When my husband's traveling, Mr. J offers to come and shovel our driveway or snowplow for me so I don't have to worry about it. Mr. J makes his personal trailer available to anyone in Waunakee, and I'm fairly certain most of Savannah and beyond have used the trailer at some point. You know those lines in emergency forms you fill out that say, in case of emergency, who would you put on there? Mr. J and Laura King have and will continue to be, without question, my go-to people. Every time, without question. It's not without research, commitment, and passion that Mr. J began rescued woodwork. To think that he entered into this lightly without researching the potential impact this venture may have on himself, his family, friends, neighborhoods, and community is being uninformed and miseducated. Anyone can look across the street and misinterpret what's happening when they don't have an actual and proper frame of reference in context of what actually happened. I'm sad for the Kings that the situation has come to this point. I like to think that we still live in a small enough town where if you have a concern, you can walk across the street and have a conversation with your neighbors. However, we're gathered here tonight to discuss a personal use permit and how it should be allowed for the Kings. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, next we have Roger Aiello, 1132 Bluebird Trail, representing his family, and he's in support and would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Roger Aiello. I live right next door to Jay and Laura in Grayson. My family and I have been there for 15 years. We plan on being there as long as I know my name. My family and I, we have no problem with Jay operating a business the way he has been out of his home. He's done so in a very conscientious and considerate manner. We're right next door. We've never experienced any problems or concerns with Jay running his business out of his home, or for that matter, how Jay and Laura take care of the rest of their home and property. We've never been disturbed by noise or any other aspect of what they're doing next door. In fact, I was not aware of it, that Jay had done this until I think one day I asked him, you've been around a lot lately. And then, he explained to me what he did and how he decided to change what he's doing for a living because he wants to be around Grayson more and his family, which is great. Jay and his family have always been thoughtful, caring, conscientious, considerate neighbors. Jay's one of the most friendly and approachable people I've ever met, and especially in our neighborhood, one of the most approachable people I've ever met. And my family and I are real happy to have the Kangs as our next door neighbor.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael and Kim Hughes, 1119 Bluebird Trail. Would like to speak? You're opposed.
Yeah, I guess I get to be the pariah of the neighborhood. And as I've told Mr. Kane, what I'd like him to do is to follow the law. I don't want to put him out of business. I don't want to affect his livelihood, but I've always said what I want is the law to be complied with. One of the things about a residential zoning area, it is not designed for manufacturing. It is supposed to be, is the intent of the village itself, is supposed to be quiet and peaceful. We have noise ordinances that say the noise cannot be more than 50 decibels at night and cannot be more than 60 decibels during the day. Now, yes, I think a lot of people think, oh, that we're crazy because we're hearing stuff. Well, the fact of the matter is we do hear stuff. We've heard these things being operated at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And maybe it was because he was trying to get a lot of stuff done and it just how it worked. He had, that was the only time he could do. I commend him for wanting to be at home. I commend him for wanting to be there for his children. But the fact of the matter is, a manufacturing business with commercial grade machinery is not really the intent of what these home occupation businesses are. They're typically going to be service-based. And the examples that he provided for Spanx and Google and Under Armour, the manufacturing in those places was done 100 miles away, at least, off-site. They weren't done in the business. Yes, my wife likes to, a lot of people said, oh, we don't hear them, we don't hear anything, right? And the fact of the matter is a lot of the people that they're talking about, they live on the same area that he does. They're on that same street. Sound goes out this way. We are directly kitty corner from him, so the sound that goes out goes right through our window. And yes, you may think we're crazy, but we have heard this stuff at midnight and at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to put him out of business. I want him to follow the law. So the law says you cannot have the noise over 60 decibels at night. So therefore, he has to do something to ensure that that is satisfied. Or it's 50 decibels at night. It can't be 60 during the day. I'm asking that that gets implemented, that he has to have standards, something in place that does not go over that level. Now, somebody else has said, oh, I've walked past, and I'm sorry if I've mischaracterized you, but I believe somebody had said, oh yeah, I've walked past and I've seen him working in his garage. Well, the ordinance says that the work has to be in enclosed dwelling or garage. Enclosed modifies both words. It also says nothing can be displayed. Which,
Actually,
You can take
your
mine.
name was on there too, so if you'd like to keep going, go ahead for 3 more minutes.
thank you. So what that means is nothing can be visible. He cannot work with his garage doors open. He cannot work in his driveway. He cannot work in his backyard. That's what the ordinance is telling us. That's what I would like to be complied with. If he can comply with that kind of stuff, by all means, go for it. But there has to be the business cannot be done outside the confines of his home or the confines of his garage. The noise levels must meet village ordinances, which are expressed in the ordinances themselves. There's also talk about emissions, and there's there's smoke, there's whatever is out there. We don't necessarily know how he operates his business. We don't know what is being put out there. What the ordinance says is it has to be within, not outside the norms of what the normal use of a residential area would be. Okay, fine. That's what the ordinance says. So what is he proposing to do, and is what he's proposing to do within those norms? There's nothing in his application that says that. Now, yes, people say, oh, I'm being hyper-technical. Well, I'm sorry, this is what the law says. So you need to obey the law. And again, I commend him for what he's doing. But what he is seeking is a privilege to operate a manufacturing business in a residential zone. I'm a resident in a residential zone. I have a right. I have a right not to hear it. I have a right not to see it. I have a right not to smell it. All I'm asking for, if the board is going to do something, it's we need more information about what he is going to do. What is his equipment? What's the decibel levels? How is he going to operate it? What steps is he taking to ensure that the noise levels, the emission levels, whatever, are being complied with? That is all I am asking for. We need more information. There's no reasonable basis on which the board can grant him an application at this time. There needs to be more out there. We need to know what's going on. That is what I'm asking the board to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Eric Bussey. And 6519 Harvest Moon Court is in support. He provided a written comment earlier in an email. Did you want that read?
Either or I can read it, either way, doesn't matter.
Why don't you, I don't, do I have it?
In that packet, yes.
I saw that I received it, but I don't have it. I didn't print it, so I could pull it up though.
I didn't print it either, and my eyes are older than I thought.
It's the last of them.
That was the last one we received, yeah. Do you have it up, by any chance? Otherwise, I can pull it up.
It's the
Wanna
very
read?
first one.
You can read, go ahead, Joe. Oh, we'll get it for you.
Okay.
Joe's got it.
Well, or you can just take it. There we go. I'm writing in support of Jay King's application to operate a home-based business. I've only known Jay and his family to be considerate, respected members of our community, and the complaint put forth doesn't seem to match my perception of Mr. Kang. Recently, Waunakee has been seen as a community that is pro-small business. While I know there are members of our community that are somewhat reluctant with change, the revitalizing of the downtown area has been nothing short of an amazing transformation, from a once desolate strip of rundown buildings and struggling businesses to a growing business district full of small businesses, from chiropractors, fitness, boutique craft stores and spas, nail salons, to a full-fledged brewery with rooftop seating. While I understand that Mr. Kang is not located downtown nor plans to move there, he and his business should still be considered a part of the revitalization of Waunakee and what makes Waunakee a great place to live and work. Without members of the community, such as the businesses listed above, but more importantly, Mr. Kang, Waunakee would look and feel like most other small towns I drive through every day, filled with vacant buildings and a declining feel. I'd like to offer a few thoughts regarding a few of the documented issues outlined in the complaint. Please know that I'm aware that these may be considered extreme and somewhat ridiculous, but I'm using my counterpoints to show just how ridiculous the initial complaint is. Noise. While noise restrictions are a common requirement in many of today's rural settings, to make a suggestion that noise levels should be at or below the 60 decibel threshold seems ill-chosen. What that tells me is that no one should be outside at any time of the day doing anything except talking at normal levels, as those conversations are generally around 60 decibels. To give some crazy examples, that means no more kids shooting hoops in the front yard, no more neighborhood parties, no more kids playing in the backyard pool, or running through sprinklers. No more fire pit parties, a Waunakee staple, and my goodness, no more high school football games. In my youth, I played in a band that practiced in a garage. I still play today, albeit indoors. I can promise you that without actual readings, the decibel level inside these rooms was and is well above 60 decibels, and in fact, probably closer to concert level loud, approaching 120. Regardless of location, this noise level is measured at a close proximity as they are confined to a small space. These levels are also constant, 2 to 4 hours at a time. My point here is that Mr. Kang is likely not running his machines for those durations at a time, and no one outside of Mr. Kang is being subjected to those noise levels, as he is the only one inside the garage. Doesn't want to let me scroll. Here we go. Regardless of the above, I'm confident that Mr. Kang can respect the noise levels as outlined in village ordinances, as certified decibel readers are now easily obtainable. No one, including Mr. Kang, wants to lose their hearing, however. It should be made clear that noise levels should not be measured by simply taking a reading inside his shop, as that is not an accurate representation of how the noise travels. As you move away from the noise, the sound deadens quickly, regardless of soundproofing. Other factors are also relevant, something as simple as a wind direction.
Thank you, Joe, for reading for us. And I'll apologize to Eric if you would have read that faster than Joe, but that's where we got to within that. So those are all of our public comments. Was there anyone else that we received anything from?
I've not received any more, no.
Okay, anyone else that wanted to make a comment?
I just wanted to make a comment.
Say who you are.
Pardon me?
Say who you are, please.
Sharon Ziegler. My house is directly across from Jay's garage on the Coma Crossing. And I will have to say, I don't hear any noise, even when I'm outside in the summertime. And if it's any thing that I do hear, and he's got the doors closed and an air conditioner running in the summertime, it'd be like a vacuum cleaner going off in someone's house. It's so quiet if I hear anything at all. So I have no problem with it at all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I'm Rochelle, I'm in Waunakee. I just want to say, I'm.
Rochelle, did you see?
Mo.
Mo? Okay, thank you.
We're not here to kind of take sides or right or wrong, but I think, kind of like everyone has stated, he's here, he's a great business, is very supportive of the community, and I think it's important to give that chance. Like everyone said, Jay is completely respectful. He has not done nothing, like whenever we've asked for anything or a change or anything, he's the first one there to kind of help out and jump in and make a change to help someone else. So I think he needs the opportunity to make sure that he's meeting the levels, because I completely understand. I want people to feel like they can be in their home and it's quiet and they're comfortable 100%, but he needs that opportunity to be able to show that he can meet that instead of vice versa. I think someone else said it very much more better than I'm saying right now, but just give the opportunity to meet those so everyone can feel comfortable.
Thank you. Tracy, did you get an address there, or do you need addresses?
Nakoma Crossing for Sharon Ziegler. I didn't get Rochelle Mo, 2010 Foggy Mountain. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Am I allowed to?
Actually, we'll get probably some questions for you from the committee at that point. Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And Kevin, comments right off the bat?
I think we heard a lot about noise, and we do measure noise. In fact, our police department assists with that, and they generally are the service that deals with the noise complaints and does the measurement, which is at the property line. It's not within, somebody suggested it's within the confines of the structure. It's actually at the property line. And they would need to meet those, noise standards. They can't exceed that. And like Lenny said, there's a daytime standard, a nighttime standard. He would not be able to exceed those. In terms of, there's some standards in here in terms of what there's some shalls and there's some mays. And, I would say that the manufacturing is a may. And that's something I think that's discretionary in terms of allowing within a home occupation, because one will say that one part said it may be restricted to a service-oriented business, but then number 9 is that the planning commission can restrict the machinery that's going on within the structure. My point is that if there's machinery, that's more than service-orientated type of noise that's gonna occur. So I think Brian's drafted the standards that we thought were appropriate, and certainly noise would be one, the hours of operation, as well as we left a possibility for any additional limitations that the Plan Commission wanted to put on the business. And I'll reiterate that, a home occupation may not even be required if he can meet the standards for the exception that a home occupation is actually a permitted use and not a conditional use, and he would not need to get the CU if he feels that he meets those standards. Again, he'd still have to meet the noise standards, because that's not within our home, it's not within our home occupation, it's another part of the code. And so he'd have to meet that regardless if he gets, if he deemed himself to be a permitted use.
Okay. Commission members, questions, comments? Brian,
May I start?
you can start. You look like you were ready to
Any
go.
complaints on noise in the past?
We received a written complaint from the Hughes. I think that was the limit on the number of complaints that we received.
And when that complaint happened, did we happen to check? Or by then the noise was gone, or what was it?
I know, I think we advised the Hughes that if they heard the noise, that they could contact the police department, and the police would go out and make the measurement, and I don't know if that occurred.
You talk in this, in the proposed conditional use permit, we talk about, or actually, it's not even the permit, I don't think, here, about the nighttime and daytime standards, but it doesn't really provide any hours of what defines nighttime and daytime, other than maybe what the proposed operating hours would be. For your standards, daytime standards are 60 decibel, nighttime standards are 50, there's no, nighttime and daytime can be loosely interpreted.
Is 2G, I think, is speaking to the time? It
Yeah,
still
we had
doesn't speak to
suggested
the
some times in
actual
terms
levels.
of trying to mimic, I think, what our construction restrictions are with regard to noise, and that was 7 AM to 9 PM. And I was just looking through our noise levels to see if they actually had a time in here, and I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, and that's fine if we distinguish that the daytime and nighttime noises are the same as the operating hours, whatever they might be, just so that's clear and that somebody can't, otherwise it's a little ambiguous.
Off the cuff, Brian, I would say it's 7 to 9. I don't see anything that would suggest otherwise, that the nighttime would start at 9 o'clock.
Okay, one of the things that has come up a few times here is, number one, in the CUP, did Mr. King have any input on some of these conditions that were
No.
put in the CUP? This was drafted strictly from the village perspective, because it talks about the conditional use permit without any further restrictions. So I'm wondering about the hours of operation, because some of the comments that were made on the hours of operation is that there was stuff going on at midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever. How does that get managed, if whatever those hours would end up being?
Yeah, we'd have to rely on our police department in terms of enforcing it, and, our police department's only gonna know if there's an operation if there's a nuisance of some sort, if it's a light nuisance or a noise nuisance or something that you could tell from the street or from the property that there's an operation going on.
So if there's a conditional use permit established with hours, those hours of operation that are allowed, as long as they're not exceeding the decibels or whatever infractions might be, visible, open garage, whatever, at that point, the complaint could be issued even during those hours.
One more time?
If there's established hours, so right now it says 7 to 9. So if Mr. Kane would happen to operate with the garage door open, or exceeds noise or there's a complaint about noise, you have to get somebody out, the police will have to get out there and check it, and then there'll be steps after that.
Right.
On how to.
Correct, yes. He'd be in violation of the CUP. He'd also be in violation of our, other provisions within our code.
Okay, that brings me to the next question. I do not see anything in here, and I'm not sure if this is something we'd want to look at, but set the CUP with a period of time so that there's subsequent reviews.
What we've done in the past is, I don't know if we have as much discretion in setting a time period for like a year. What we've done in the past is we'll have a review at a year, or if we receive X amount of complaints and the staff would like to bring in, at least at the staff level, we think it warrants bringing a reconsideration by the Plan Commission. if you give us that discretion, we'd probably do it regardless if you give us this discretion or not, that if we do receive some complaints, that we would kick it back to the planning commission. The other option, like you're suggesting, is that we do a provisional 1 year.
1 year,
and then
2 years,
say
3,
with
whatever, set a
with 1 year
timeline on it.
review. We did that, that's a pretty good example. We did that with the haunted house out on Highway K. I think we gave them a 1 year the first year, and then a 3 year, and then a 5 year.
I think something of that would be beneficial. The last question, really probably for Mr. Kang, is do you have employees that work for you?
Absolutely not.
It's a self-proprietary business.
Absolutely. Unless you count my CNC.
We'd want something addressed in there and that that's what it is, because if we start having employees there, that
That's
changes the
actually
whole
part of the
dynamic.
provision, states that
Yep.
it can only be a sole operation.
Okay.
All right, I'll go back this, are you done, Brian? Awesome. Brad, questions?
No, pretty straightforward.
Chris?
2A says that the garage door shall remain closed when work is performed. Is that currently how the business is operated?
So it is now how it is operated.
Okay. And within 7 to 9, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. is also?
How the business is operated.
Okay.
Okay. Other Brian?
Hello, Brian. No, you hit my garage door question. I'm curious, in your garage, is it subdivided?
It is not.
Even was I, no, okay, so
I mean,
it's all,
There's no actual partition, but it's built with a 2-door bay and a 1-door bay.
mm-hmm,
You know, so
Yeah.
and the 1-door bay is the 1.5 portion.
well, you've got it, okay. I don't think I had any other questions.
Kristen?
None, Brian asked the ones that I was,
Sorry.
took my question, yeah.
I do have another question, though.
Not till we're all done. We'll give others an opportunity. You might hear it already.
Yep.
Joe?
Well, like everything else that was already asked, but the one thing that I came across, I found, it's 133-1067, specifies 75 decibels at night, 85 during the day. I didn't find anything that was 50 and 60.
It's in the residential,
It's in the actual
yeah.
code. Or in,
I just had it up, let me see if I can bring it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 26-49.
That's all I need.
That's all you need? Yep. So, I have some interesting observations, I guess, or questions maybe too for you. A couple of them, has Mr. King been cited for any noise violations at this point?
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay. Any smell violations?
no.
Any excess garbage dumpsters, anything outside the building that we would not be okay with? Okay. The smell part of it, I guess, is one that's interesting, being in a farm town. Especially at this time of the year. But, you know, if it is well, I guess that happens in the residential zone too, but, so that's one thing, those are the questions. The noise, that the Hughes family provided with, their complaint was they used a dishwasher, I believed, which operates at 50 decibels, I think,
About 45 to
45 to 50
45 to
decibels.
55, yeah.
I'm just, thinking of how many things we have in the community that are over that are in a residential zone. I'm pretty sure on Friday nights at football games, we're well over that, throughout the community for those things. Is that fair to say that?
Yes,
Do they have permission to do that?
until somebody complains.
Okay. So, my question is are our decibel levels probably at the appropriate level right now? So that's one question I have, maybe for other things to put into it. I don't know that, so, but that, just your example made me think, wow, there's so many things that are over that decibel level of a dishwasher.
Right, well, if I could, something like that, yes, I realize you're at a football game, the noise goes out, and we also know that the noise does dissipate over time, so that, where the high school is, yes, there are some people who live nearby. I guess you would have to take a measurement there to see whether it is over. But again, yes, there could be a parade of horribles to say, oh, we're asking to, ban all lawnmowers and stuff. Well, no, there's exemptions for lawnmowers and for snow blowers and, things, air conditioning units. Yes, we obviously need those things to, survive the heat in in the summer. We do realize that. But the point is that, yes, there are decibel levels, and if the board wants to change that, well, that I guess would be go to a referendum for the public at large.
I just was curious
yes,
based on your
yeah.
comment that it was like, wow, there's
Yeah,
probably
no,
some things that
I
are.
realize that, again, we're not looking to, go back to the, Middle Ages where there's nothing. It's just what the law is what the law says.
Absolutely. And if you wouldn't mind me, instead of speculating, because I was curious, I received a complaint. I wanted to make sure that I did my due diligence. And instead of using an iPhone as a decibel meter, I actually got a certified acoustic SPL meter so that I can know with precision at what decibel levels my machines were operating and how loud it was at the lot line. Not only did I test just the machine on, but I tested it machine on under load. I tested machines on that I use concurrently. Every possible scenario I tried to conceive of, I tested the decibel levels at the lot line. I have 2 machines that come close, within 3 decibels. But what you have to understand, and decibels, it's not an anecdotal how you feel about things. This is a science. And so 3 decibels is a 50% reduction in intensity of noise. So it's not a linear progression, it's a logarithmic progression. And so the loudest of my machines is at 57.3 decibels at the lot line, under full load. So I'm happy to provide this for you. This was taken with a NTI SL2 acoustic analyzer, which is in the industry considered one of it's probably what the police department uses. I don't know. All of these readings were taken mid-cycle for 15-second duration. And if you'd like to take a look at this, I'd be happy to provide it.
I'm good with it. If anybody else wants to see it, that's fine. I know there's all kinds of variables within that, what your height is, what the wind's doing, all those things can play into, what's happening with that. So, I guess, Kevin, why don't you put out what our options are here?
Yeah, I think we propose, conditions to place on the CU permit. And I haven't heard any additional comments raised by the Plan Commission that would be added to it. So I think that we'd be in a position at the staff level to recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the conditions that were included in the packet. That's option number 1. I think option number 2 is, I think that the applicant actually has his own recourse in terms of claiming that he's exempt from the home occupation. I think he's probably would find more comfort in having gone through this process and getting an actual CUP. Regardless, if there's a complaint regarding noise or other nuisance complaints, our police department will follow him if he has a conditional use or not.
Okay. So the business, based on what I'm seeing, the business can only operate from 7 AM to 9 PM?
That's what we're suggesting as language.
Okay. And so it doesn't really matter what night, day versus decibels are, if that's the case?
Right, and I think, I didn't find it, but I think our code, it has, a daytime decibel and a nighttime decibel. I think that's referring to 7 to 9 during the daytime, and after 9, from 9 to 7 is nighttime.
Okay. So I would like to ask Mr. King then, so is that acceptable to you obviously the complaint stated you had things running at 12, 1, 2 in the morning.
So there are absolutely times where I did do things in the garage at night, but as a homeowner, I'm allowed to do home improvement, which is aside from the business as well, right? So there's a lot of, absolutely. So I'll just answer the question. I'm 100% okay with it.
Okay.
But but that's a good question though. How do you, when he is, like, I've done stuff at night, like, when do you,
So
how do you
actually,
separate
I
business?
can't let you comment.
Oh, okay.
The ones that are directly involved, I can, because the public hearing part of it, so, and that's why I'm asking Mr. King, and the uses as well. They need to hear that as well from you.
if it's okay that I ask a question.
Sure.
So, how is there a distinction between when a lot of what came from the original complaint were actually things that I was doing for home improvement, so they made accusations of me spraying for my business. My business is nothing but all natural products. Like, I don't spray chemicals and paint on my products. There was a home improvement project to redo a room for my son for his birthday. I was working outside those hours, absolutely, yes. Guilty of that. But as a homeowner, I should be entitled to do home improvement projects. If I was a chef, that would be akin to me being a chef, coming home with my knives that I chef with at a restaurant and not being able to use them at home to cook a meal because they're work related. Like, it just doesn't seem right. So when it comes to business, absolutely, I will operate the business within and exceedingly within the guidelines as put forth by this board. But
Can I respond?
Yes.
So, yeah, and this is part of the issue, I guess, we would have is that, how are we to distinguish between what's being done as a remodeling and what's being done for the business? Because a lot of the equipment he uses has this dual purpose. And so, so yes, it would be, okay, I can't, I'm not gonna operate the machinery for the business at night, but I'm gonna do the business, I'm gonna do my remodeling at night with the doors open or whatever. And it's just like, because there's this, it's one of these where, if he's gonna use equipment that has a dual purpose of both for the remodeling or, home personal use and for his business, I would say all that has to fall within the visibility and display things where the equipment, that just has to be all done indoors with the garage door shut. You just can't do it outside. Now, yes, if he's out painting his house or if he's cutting down a tree in his backyard, okay, there's no question about that. But for other stuff, it shouldn't be up to the neighbors to figure out, what's going on. And I doubt very much that the police or the village have the ability to, the manpower to kind of come out and say, okay, what is he doing this time?
So I'm gonna say, I think it's important, and I'm not speaking for any of you, you guys can pipe it up here. I think it's important that you guys have conversations with one another. To me, it would be very simple for, if you're gonna be doing that project, you're modeling, that you do have a neighbor that it bothers at night, that you might wanna go over and let them know, hey, I'm doing this. That way you have that knowledge ahead of time. That might be, if you guys can you guys face each other and say, yeah, I can do this? I mean, that seems like a real easy way to accomplish it, because I'm not hearing a lot of other people in the audience saying what you're saying. So it's right, when you ever have a complaint from someone, you wanna address it with them. And if it can be addressed with them, great. If not, it came to this body right now. And we're doing what,
I'm sorry.
it's okay. I just wanted to say it's important that you guys have conversations with one another, and you probably can work out close to 100% of these things pretty relatively easy.
I haven't said much, but I just want to
This
say.
is my wife, Laura.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to say, like, from the get-go, had they come to us and had this discussion with us, you're shaking your head, but we are very, very, very open people and encourage people coming to talk to us. We actually enjoy it. And we would never have wanted to put them in a situation that they felt like they couldn't. And I think you've heard many people in this room say how open and inviting we are. And I guess after the original complaint was issued, we didn't know who complained because we've never heard anything. Like, we didn't know. We had to get an open records request to find out, and then actually had to physically run out and try to stop these two at some point. 4 attempts to try to talk to them. And so I know you're shaking your head, I'm right behind you, but I really.
He came to me the first time we talked.
it was day 5.
Yeah.
It was the 4 days of attempting.
But I guess the point is that, like, we really welcome that, no matter what. I know you guys feel differently, but I would really hope that moving forward, we could maybe get that to happen, so we don't have to be in this situation.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. You guys are starting it right now, which is awesome. Our goal is to make sure that this ordinance and policy is in place properly, and we have that in front of us. It sounds like we have some agreement from the, I don't know what you call you, those involved. So, as Kevin pointed out, we would need a motion to approve this. or, we didn't get to your question, did we?
No,
I
no, we
apologize.
didn't.
I apologize. Go ahead.
One of the things Kevin mentioned is, this CUP as it lays out here as being a option for a recommendation. I would ask Mr. King, has he seen it and read it and agreed to the terms that are in here?
Absolutely.
So it has hours of operations, which you had reiterated that would turn around and make that the daytime standards, which would be 60 decibels. The one thing I do not, or I'm not clear on here, is one of the things that I brought up earlier about a proprietary business, which is, self-employed, no employees. I don't see that addressed here specifically, unless when it says it's a home occupation, that by default means that.
By default, it has to meet the ordinance, so they would not be allowed to have an
Okay.
employee.
And then the other thing that I would like to see included in here would be a 1-year review to make sure things are meeting conditions, and then at that point, they can, would look to extend it if everything's falling in line. That would be my recommendation. As part of it.
So you want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion, yes. I'll motion to accept or to propose the conditional use permit as laid out in our documents here, with the exception that we include a 1-year review on the conditional use permit with the applicant.
Okay, motion by Brian Wells. Second by Joe Zitzelberger.
Sorry, I got one last one
Other
that I
comments?
circled in
You can.
and would
This
like
is
to
your-
come
this is
back
your
to.
time.
I
Go ahead.
apologize. Under 2A, it's minor, but the idea of all garage doors shall remain closed when the work is performed. As a household with a lot of kids, I'm envisioning summertime. Kids are home, kids are playing, kids are probably in and out quite a bit. I don't want this to turn into call the police department, that door's open. It's the first, he's in the third bay. In my mind, the closed doors maybe help with acoustics. Whether the doors are open or closed, in my mind, the acoustical requirements are still there. So I think throwing maybe out that all garage doors shall remain closed is a bit excessive, and something that I certainly wouldn't want to be pinned with.
What about for
through the summer?
Well,
I could
he's
say
asking you to
the
make
third
an
bay.
amendment to your
Yeah,
motion.
sorry.
You
little
need
slow on
to have it, decide whether you want to. That's where we're at.
Can the amendment be such that during operating hours or during times of operation? Does that make sense? So if you're operating, the doors should be closed, but during the summer, if the kids are, that's a whole other issue.
Operating equipment?
Yes, something like that.
While equipment is being operated?
Yes.
Or you just want it to,
I guess in my mind, if
so you can vote no right now
If
if
they-
he doesn't modify, know that. But I'm kind of following what you're saying,
yeah,
in that the decibels can't reach that anyways. Where it might
whether
have
bay
an
one
issue
is
is,
open or not,
yeah,
he's in bay 3.
yeah.
Picturing, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3.
It's all about the decibels.
Bay
too,
1 is where all the
noise.
kids' bikes are, coming in and out,
So if he's
going
got
in
his
and out the
doors
front.
open, he's gonna probably go over his decibels out there at that lot line as opposed to if
Right.
they're closed.
Which would be on it.
Would you have any
on
issues with that?
King to realize it.
So,
I'm
I
trying to
just-
understand what exactly you're, for the door.
so if he
the
has
door
his
can be
doors open,
So-
for example, he can't go over his decibel level at the property line
Mhm.
at that point.
Well, if you,
That
you
would
know,
be that would be a time where it could be subject and probably wouldn't wanna operate your machinery during that time. Fair to say? That,
As long as the other conditions are in there and being met, yeah, that makes sense to me. It's gonna be on our 1-year review too, so,
so you accept that
sure,
change?
yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And thank you for everybody for your comments and participating in this process. It's important to all of us for hearing that. So, thank you.
thank you.
I expect all of you to stay for the rest of the meeting. Kidding. You gotta go. I get it.
I just have a question on what the process is from now. Like, what do I have to do, or?
Kevin?
Just call me tomorrow.
Call Kevin tomorrow. Okay. All right, we'll take a 5-second break here while everybody gets out of the room. Maybe 10, 15.
they had was on beauty salon. I gave one person to help. Concerned.
Oh, thank you.
I truly am sorry it came to this.
I say,
It's never my intention.
Good to see you.
You know,
And I think, yeah, going forward, we'll work together.
All right, sorry guys, I'm just getting organized here from all the papers. Can I give you these? So I don't, not,
Thank you.
Yeah, that was nice.
Nice little compliment to them.
It helps, it matters.
thank you.
You start talking about every house around you except for the one. It's like,
I drove it.
what's the
looked at it.
outlier?
All right. Next, we have our initial consultation, Coanessery multifamily project at 701 West Main Street. Kevin, do you want to introduce and?
Very few comments. In fact, I'm gonna turn it over to you. And sure. Our staff comments are somewhat limited, but I can probably provide some initial feedback that we had after.
Perfect. So if you can say your name and
Sure.
who you're with and stuff.
So I'm Brian Sweeney. I'm with Coanessery Development Group, and we are based out of Overland Park, Kansas. But I get to live in a nice little town called Stillwater, Minnesota, across the St. Croix, and have been with Coanessery Development Group for 3 years. And we focus on workforce and affordable housing. We've been in the business for 30 years, and only recently have entered kind of the upper Midwest market. We are just finishing up a project which received WEDA support, Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority support for a workforce affordable housing project in downtown Reedsburg, Wisconsin. And we've been in touch with the village staff for a year and a half and have looked at various properties within the city, within the village, that we've identified that could be, we believe, very positive affordable housing projects. We were watching closely your August task force report, and we're monitoring it throughout. And in short, the Waunakee Housing Task Force report talked about the need for housing at all income levels. And particularly, there was a large missing middle. And we think our proposal will address that in spades. So specifically, we are proposing a 50-unit project that would have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedrooms. They would be targeted to individuals between 30% of median income and 80% of median income, including 8 market rate units. The housing tax credit application through WEDA is a competitive process, and there's an application due the first week of December. And we hope to submit an application to WEDA in the first week of December. So when we say income restricted at 30% of median income or income restricted at 60% of median income, specifically, we would envision these units, a 1-bedroom could be as low as $514 per unit, up to $1,000 per unit for like the 80% median income. A 2-bedroom would be $610 up to $1,261. And a 3-bedroom would be at 50% of median income, and that rent would be at $1,200. And the low-income tax credit process requires the developer to maintain these rents over a 30-year period, not just a 15-year period, but actually over a 30-year period. So Tracy, I'm wondering if you could put up the bird's eye view, which literally is a bird's eye view. The first thing we wanted to do was to show a building and how it complements the area. And So you can see the apartment complexes on the south side of Main Street. And while those are 3 stories tall, and this building would be 4 stories tall, the actual height would be approximately the same level, because of the elevation on the south side is between 6 to 10 feet, and then it scales down. So even though we have a 4-story building primarily, it is about the same height and mass as those buildings across the street. And maybe go back to the site plan. So we met with staff and consultants, and we presented this 50-unit apartment complex, and it has 45 covered parking stalls and 30 surface parking stalls. So it would be at a 1.5 per 1 unit, one apartment, 1.5 number of parking spaces to an individual unit. We're aware of your current ordinance regarding parking, and we would like to politely make an argument that the 1.5 is sufficient for this particular development. We have done, in the last 3 years, we're involved in 15 projects in 6 states, and we have not had a parking ratio over 1.5. So we presented an initial proposal to the staff, and this illustrates a couple of, we came back and reflected some of their comments, including a front entrance on Main Street for the tenants. The sidewalk would align with the existing setback. We moved the trash enclosure, and we found a way that the uncovered parking could connect to the retail space. Why don't we go to the daytime picture? So, it was 15 months ago, I think, we spoke with village staff and consultants, and we had 70 units on the site, and they felt it was rather dense. The other comment was they felt we needed a little more of a village feel to it, and our really good architect put this together here, and we think it, with the texture of the building, it breaks up the scale, and it looks, if you go down Main Street, it looks, some of these areas, like these budding out areas, look like little shops down the block. And then there's a nighttime version of that. And Tracy, maybe go back to this underground parking. So interestingly, our submission to WIDA would be a family-oriented building, not a senior building. And there is a requirement that, I think it's 15% of the units be 3 bedrooms, and they have access from the street. So in this design, we kind of show almost a townhome feel, where you can walk up to a door and a front door of the individual 3-bedroom apartments. They can also, those families can also enter in a common area from the back, and it would be a lobby, so they could go up in the elevator, et cetera. So that, in a nutshell, is what we were looking at and proposing. We're not asking for any specific formal recommendation. We wanted to present this to you, get your feedback, and continue a conversation. And if we're in the ballpark and we get a award from WIDA, which would be in March or April in the spring, then we would come back to you with a more formal site plan, get really technical with staff and the like. So I'm certainly open to some questions or comments on what you're looking at here.
Brad, comments?
What's the percentage of 30% CMIs?
I have that. So 10 of the units of the 50 would be at 30% AMI or CMI. 20% of the units would be at 50% of AMI. 12% of the units would be at 60% AMI. And 8 would be market rate.
What type of amenities? You gonna have a little community room in
We
there?
would have, yeah.
Exercise?
We'd have a community room, exercise, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Any comments on the design? I'm kind of anxious to hear.
Brian.
I'm saving some of my comments.
Brian's
Kevin
waiting.
and
I
the
can
height
see it.
restrictions.
Just look down at him. He's got.
I just, was just something I'd point out here is that your nighttime and daytime show a garage door on the west side, but your site plan does not. And I think having a drive-through would be, where they could drive through on either end would be beneficial, instead of having to come in on one
Can you
end.
speak up?
Oh, sorry. When you look at this, it shows the cars coming in and out here
Yeah.
on this drawing, but if you look at your site plan,
Yep.
it does not show that.
We changed the site plan after the staff meeting, but we didn't change the design.
I would think there'd be some benefit of having a garage or an entranceway on either end. Just-
On either end, on,
Right now, your site plan only shows a door or an entranceway on the, not the site plan, the next one. On the underground park, or it's not even, it's at ground, it's at ground level parking. You show an entranceway on the north
That's a
end
surface
there, but
lot.
nothing on the
Site plan.
west end. You follow me?
so,
But that drawing shows a door there.
right, and we didn't change the drawing after the staff meeting.
But my recommendation, or my thoughts would be, is
Yeah.
you'd want to have an entrance on both ends.
Okay, okay.
I'm not an architect though, so I just.
Okay, others? Chris?
So it's 75 parking stalls. Do we know how short that is of meeting requirements for the village?
They've calculated it. I think the last couple multifamily projects that we've looked at, we've been modeling it after other communities that include City of Middleton and other surrounding communities. And I think we recognize, probably a year ago, that our parking ratios were outdated and they needed to be updated. And so we've been routinely granting exceptions. And so that has been our charge, is to look at updating our parking demands going forward. And I shared with Brian that he's gonna have to make the arguments that this meets the standard in terms of what's necessary. That, as a planning commission, you've been reluctant to approve parking stalls that won't be used. I mean, you don't wanna put more impervious area than you need to, nor cause these types of projects to cost more because of the constraints they're trying to meet in terms of the funding that's involved in it. So I don't know if that's probably a long answer of how much they're over, but I think that's something we'll have to visit when they make the actual submission. That if you think that what we've done in the past in terms of looking at surrounding communities and then requiring them to really you make the arguments with comparables on how they don't think they'll need the additional parking that's required by ours.
On the surface, I would say we're a little light, but just based on the units and the number of people that could potentially be in the units, I think it just appears to be a little light, but
Where would overflow parking go?
that's the challenge here. There's no street parking here.
How about the egress to the parking lot at Piggly Wiggly? How does that work? Right-of-ways and easements?
Right now, it's not, it's shown as a possibility, and we suggested at a staff level that they start to have some conversations with the neighboring property owners to see if it'd be beneficial for both of them in terms of getting some, pedestrian and maybe vehicle access, cross traffic between the properties.
Okay.
Can you speak at all to the access to the north then?
What's that?
Can you speak at all to the access to the north? What, I mean, because I think that is, isn't that the park area that we recently?
That's just a turnaround area that they're showing.
Okay, so it wouldn't have to be there?
No.
By any means? Okay.
Can I make sure I'm following that? You're suggesting that people come through the parking lots to get in here?
I think that it's worthwhile to have conversations. Yeah, I do think it would be beneficial to both property owners, but they both got to agree to it. I mean, I don't think we'd be in a position where we could require it, because, you know, Piggly Wiggly's not having anything before us. But I think it's worked well, like at the Lone Girl with Quick Trip. I think anytime you can get internal movement, especially if somebody's going from the grocery store back to their apartment, and they don't have to go all the way out to the highway and make that maneuver, it's beneficial.
And I would agree with that statement, absolutely.
But
If
I
they
think
could make
Chris
it
is
happen and work with the
hesitant
landlords.
because, you know, maybe it's only beneficial to the residential and not the commercial. But I don't know, Chris. I think
That's what I'm trying to
they need
figure
to
out.
have a
You
conversation.
gave, your example was commercial to commercial. This is residential to commercial into that parking lot. And I know just the congested nature of that parking lot with McDonald's and Piggly Wiggly in that zone. It's gonna be tough to force more traffic through there. That's just my initial thought.
Okay.
I'm not saying it can't be done, that's my initial. Parking, can you share with me, Kevin, maybe you don't know, but if you pull up this one? The apartment complex down on the bottom right off the highway. Go up a little bit, Tracy. How many units are in that, do we know?
I don't know.
I'm just looking at how much parking they have, and if they have underground parking there or not.
They have underground.
They have underground as well? So I'm just trying to get a feel for how many units are in the parking we have on that side.
Doesn't the other one have underground as well, Kevin? To the north there?
Yeah.
Or to the east, I
Yeah.
should say.
I know the one to the north does, I just don't know about the one to the south here, but anyway, that's one question I had, was how much parking we have for that. The other question is, have we even gone down the road with the state as far as access off of there? Off the state highway there? Cause we were kinda, I mean, I know we have it already with the vet clinic.
It's a commercial use with one access point. I suspect that they'll be entitled to one access point for a commercial property. I mean, it's a commercial property. It's certainly operating as commercial property. I don't think the state would be in a position to deny it in any way, because we're just taking one commercial use and changing it out to another residential / commercial use.
So at its peak, how many people were at the vet clinic?
No, I don't think that DOT has that ability in terms of, you know, one generates more traffic and be able to restrict the access point. They have one access point. I don't think the DOT
I
would
mean,
have.
I'm sure they
the
can
right to
engineer it
restrict
with speed or something to make sure it's okay coming out of there.
Yeah, I think, your point is well taken. Brian is putting you on notice that you better make contact with DOT and make sure that there's not gonna be
Yep.
any restrictions on the access point.
Great comment.
Does that cover it, Chris? Is that
Yeah,
everything?
the 4 stories, do we know what the height actually is?
40, it will be below the 45.
I've got a couple of questions. So, you mentioned 30 years, so the property will remain in I'm assuming it's LIHTC program for 30 years?
Yes.
And then what?
We have never, quote, flipped an affordable housing project.
Define never. How many
Never.
years? Yeah, how many years have you been in? I don't know
30
anything about
30
your
years.
company. Pardon?
30 years.
30 years?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't flip it, so do you manage it yourself?
Yes.
Is it subcontracted?
So we also have a market rate division in several states, and we manage about 6,000 housing units.
Okay. So there will be an on-site manager?
Apartment, yes,
here?
on-site
Okay.
manager.
On-site maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
6,000 units or complexes?
6,000 units.
Is this the only site you're looking at for this complex? Are there other sites you'd consider within the village?
We looked at a couple other sites, but this one was available.
This one was available?
Yes.
Have you purchased it?
We have a purchase agreement.
Oh, you have a purchase
with them,
agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so.
WIDA requires site control,
Mhm.
and that means a contract, purchase agreement.
What other restrictions, never mind, I've already answered that question. So my other question was, when I was looking at the site plan online today, it looked like you had a 15.5-foot distance between the edge of the building and the highway.
Main Street, yeah.
Yeah, and that's to code. Do we know if they're going to, at any point, widen that to 2 lanes? I'm thinking in Sauk, they've widened to 12 a number of times, and that's negatively impacted the distance between storefronts and a lot of.
They have not identified this as a potential 4-lane, but it certainly is certainly within the cards of DOT, I think, going forward. And we did ask him, there was some information on that site plan that wasn't accurate in terms of our setback requirements. We have a front yard setback that is, I don't remember the number, but you didn't show it properly, so he assured us that they would make that correction in terms of the site plan.
Did we make that correction correctly? The architects thought they did.
And you did?
Yeah.
It's 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
rated. 2.5, yeah.
So yeah, the 15 feet is not off the edge of the roadway, it's off the edge of the right-of-way. So I guess that would give, you'd want at least, it doesn't give a lot of room for widening, because you have the sidewalk, which is probably 5 feet, and you'd want a minimum of 5-6 feet of a terrace, and there's not gonna be a lot of widening opportunities going forward.
Well, and if you're saying it's right away, my gut would tell me that's not right away, it's edge of right away.
Something doesn't look right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like it set back further. It's, in addition to this, being maybe an optimal site, it's also the entrance to the village.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it is the first impression somebody gets when they're
Yep.
driving in from Highway 19. So it has some kind of special.
Nothing against the golden arches, but this may be an improvement. That was our hope, that it would be
Cover
a
up
nice
the golden
gateway,
arches.
a lovely entrance into the village.
Technically, we do have another facility before they get to there,
Yeah.
on that side even. The house is still remaining, is that correct?
What's
To
that?
the west?
The house would stay, yes. Brian, I think, to address that DOT, concern and
Yep.
the expansion of the highway, that's certainly a valid point that you're gonna have to address. Something's not right with that drawing yet, though.
Okay.
Something looks off. I don't think the DOT would have asphalt right up to the right-of-way.
That's the one thing of all of the things you do where you dig the basement and pour that first wall is the
Right.
one thing you can't change.
Yeah, it's just really expensive.
Yeah, you can. This is true. With enough money, you can change everything.
And we're not showing any playgrounds or anything like that, but this area is in the floodplain. We actually had to move the building and the parking because of that.
So the remainder of the parking is on the first floor of the building, is that correct?
Correct.
And how about stormwater retention?
We gotta do that.
Joe, any questions? No? Brian?
I don't think I have any more that haven't been sort of hit. The setback from Main Street didn't look right. It does look kind of tight. Even going to the bird's eye, it just feels like it's a little bit too tight. Stormwater management, just one that always gets at me, and knowing that property and how low it is and the flooding that always occurs there, to then try to manage, capture, retain somewhere on site and what that takes up for just a sheer square footage. It, starting to remind me of all the challenges we've just sort of had with this property. It's a tight pinch.
Yeah,
And
it is.
it's tough to fit much in there, so I'll be curious to see how that kind of flushes itself out. And then follow up, that house is for sale, right? The adjacent property, any exploration of?
We did.
I mean, I know you buy more
The-
property and
the-
costs
the-
go up,
the
but it,
fl- Yeah,
I mean,
there's the economic challenge to it. The floodplain issue on that site is actually more profound than it is here. And I don't even know, I don't know if this is totally accurate, if today you could build even that house there now. It really impinges, the floodplain really impinges on the north, particularly the northern end of the site.
Yep.
So I'll try to help Brian out here. Any comments about the actual look of the building? Because I think you were looking for that too. Is that fair? Do we have any comments about that? Or if everybody's comfortable with that? And does it fit?
Can you go back to the,
Maybe the daytime view.
So a lot of different materials. And again, this, that's about 8 feet from here to here. So we really tried to break up a mass, right, to make it look
And the
less
entry-
monolithic.
This is the, coming in from 19, from Highway 12 is this far end here, yeah. Is the big golden wall, yellow?
We can, we're open. We'll print, once we get there, we'll present
It
some.
goes back to Kristen's point, is this will be the new entryway into town, so.
Would there be any signage?
Very tactful signage, probably, at one of the entrances.
On the building or off the building? Your signage?
We've done both.
We just went through that, so that'll come back.
Yeah.
We're open if there's a preference.
so a question about the nighttime view, too, would you mind switching to that? So it looks like you have LED downwash lights or uplighting, is that something standard that I just spent the weekend with lighting designers.
You're
in
ahead of me
Mineral
then.
Point. So, pardon?
You're ahead of me.
Okay.
On that one, sorry.
Maybe it was like a real clear intentional choice.
Any comments on that look?
I like the mix of textures, the change in articulation in the face of the building. I'm not a big yellow, orange, baby blue, but I mean, that's color
Okay.
palette selection. Later on down the road, it feels a little too sort of, I don't know if modern is the word I'm looking for, but
Okay.
personally, I'm a little bit more of a classic old color palette kind of guy.
It's not traditional colors that you're gonna see on our main street, I think is what, no,
Yeah.
I think we're just looking at that.
Okay, yep.
Is this what you're thinking for landscaping as well?
Again, early on. This is very early on.
I can share that, this is I don't know what iteration it is, but we've been having some pretty active discussions in terms of the entranceway to the community, the height of the building, the rooftop, the type of roofs that are being engaged, and I've been deferring to our Jason and Ed, and they're getting comfortable with this. I had a little bit of concerns in terms of making sure that was the right entranceway, but they've, I think they've gotten comfortable with it in terms of this being appropriate for this location. We should talk maybe just a minute or so about the zoning on the property.
Yeah.
Because, Brian says, this is the one that's available, and I can tell you that there's a reason why. You just finished the task force just finished their housing study, and one of the reasons that this property is available, because it's properly zoned, and it meets the requirements that are in place right now for the 25%. The 25% rule doesn't apply to this property. That 25% only kicks in or is only looked at during a rezoning process. Well, this property is already zoned commercial, so the multifamily is already allowed. And if this would put us over the 25%, it doesn't matter. It doesn't get to that part of the ordinance. So I think that's why, one of the reasons why this property is available. And I know this the task force is gonna be looking at this, or future task force, whatever that makeup is, they're gonna be looking at that over the next, you know, whatever, 6 months to a year. But this property, under our current rules, and that's what we need to apply, is that it's entitled to have this type of multifamily.
So with the comments you made, and Kristen, you brought up, off of Highway 19, 113, 19, what does that do to the parking if we move that building a little bit? I'm assuming that's gonna crunch parking even more.
Yeah, I think it's an appropriate comment, they're gonna have to resolve it. I mean, that looks out of whack in terms of the setback off of 19. I think you gotta mix comments regarding, you know, you may not have to meet our parking requirement, but what if you do have a problem? How are you gonna solve that? You know, we've granted exceptions at times, but we've always had a backup plan, all right? So if we do have a parking problem here, or one is created and we gave you an exception. When we find out we have a problem, what's the recourse? What solution do you have for us?
Okay.
Brian alluded to like sometimes when we grant an exception, there was room on site to put in some additional parking spots that up front that weren't required. And here, you're isolated, is what I'm hearing, is that where are you gonna put any overflow parking? I mean, the pig was, you know, and it's currently, you know, pretty maxed out on their parking during
Yeah.
certain times, and, you know, walking across the street's probably not appropriate in terms of having people park across the street. Something you'll have to think about and address.
I want to thank you for your interest in Waunakee and the affordable housing component. And,
Thank you.
Working to get that here is a big deal for all of us and our residents. So have we been helpful with you as far
Very
as our
much.
suggestions?
Thank you so much.
Does anyone else have any more
Really
comments?
appreciate
No, other than, I think, just generally, I think it's, you know, excited about an opportunity for something there, you know, on the facade coming in from the west. I would say that maybe something, looking at breaking that up a little bit, but,
Okay.
you know, as a whole, I think it's an interesting project, so.
I like the 30-year time horizon.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than a
Yeah.
15-year LAHTC buyout.
Great.
Anyone else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Update, well, our meeting is canceled, so we don't really have to do any updates for Waunakee Westport. And then we just have one more motion.
To adjourn.
By Chris, second by Kristen. Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.
Sam, you're wearing shorts.